I'm a little under the weather this morning, as you may have guessed from the mask and the sitting and the chair. And I'm going to do my best to rest and not walk around, but I may be clinically incapable of talking and sitting at the same time. We'll see how that goes. As you've seen, we're going around the world. And I thought we could do the same thing in our sermon this morning. The stole, yes, is from Ghana. My friend Pastor Lori Hartzell, who you've met, gave it to me. And if I'm not mistaken, tomorrow is the 1-year anniversary of my first sermon here too. So I'm really been grateful to be your pastor this past year. It's been a lot of fun. So we are going to start our trip around the world, continue our trip around the world in the sermon on May the 12th, 2013, outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. One of you has probably tracked down that's the night before Kristen and I got married. My friends John and Kiefer came. Kiefer was my best man. John was one of my groomsmen. It was really tight. It was a tough decision. And we spent the day doing, the kinds of things that you do before you get married, like going to Ohiopyle State Park and playing in the waterfalls. Traditional bachelor party stuff. And we came home that night, spent some time talking to my dad, went into the house, and in the middle of the house, in the living room, we tossed down a twin-size bed and we circled up as much of a circle as 3 people can be. And Kiefer had brought some wine and some bread. And I wasn't Presbyterian at the time, so we shared communion. None of us was ordained, but we shared communion, just broke the bread and drank the wine, and it was a really cool experience. I was really happy that we did that the night before I got married. And we're going to follow Kiefer because today I talked to him yesterday to try to get a sense to characterize what he does. He's in the Czech Republic, and his visa says that he's a teacher. And he is. He teaches English. He teaches film stuff. We were roommates in college. And he also teaches Bible classes. He calls Discovery Bible Study. And they'll read the Bible and they'll ask the question. There's 3 questions they ask. And now I don't remember any of them. But they ask questions about the verse, the stories that they've read. And the last question, of course, is, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? And he's doing this in the Czech Republic, a country that, as far as I know, at one point in its history was, Christian by mandate. It is now 1% Christian. 1%. And Kiefer said that a lot of the times the church... Kiefer said a lot of times the churches serve as sort of an obstacle for someone coming to Christ. And the way that he talked about what he does was it was really fascinating. So he'll start this Discovery Bible Study, and they'll go through these questions of what does it say, how does it read to you, or whatever, and what are you going to do about it? And they'll do that for a few years. And then after a few years, the person might decide that they want to officially become a Christian, which is funny because they've been following Jesus without really understanding that that's what they're doing for about the past 3 years. And then they'll start their own Bible study. And I said, how big are these? He said, well, they're about 12 to 20 people. When they get to about 20 people, they split off and they start another one. And according to the mission organization he works with, when these Discovery Bible studies are more than half filled with people who've made commitments to Christ, they call them house churches. And I said, so what do you do about communion? How do you do communion? And he says, well, what we do with communion, and we don't like officially call it communion, but he'll say, at the Bible studies that he leads in the evenings, they will have a meal together, and he'll say, well, let's give thanks to Jesus. And what are you thankful for? He'll ask them what they're thankful for. And then he'll ask, what are you struggling with? And he'll say, you know what? Jesus is here the whole time. And he'll end with sort of a quick prayer to wrap the whole thing up. But he'll mention during the meal that this is what people have done for thousands of years, remembering Jesus. And some of the Bible studies, they'll make it really big and official and do the ceremony and the words of institution the way that we do them, and sometimes they won't. And he's not a pastor or any of those things, but it's a memory of Christ. Since I told him we were talking about World Communion Sunday and I wanted to get an update on how they do things there, he said that one of his favorite stories is that he's friends with a Protestant pastor. He goes to that church sometimes. And this Protestant pastor, once a month, meets up with a Catholic priest, and they do communion together. Not in a way that would get anyone in trouble. The Catholics come to the priest, and the Protestants go to the minister, go to the Protestant pastor. But it was just such a neat way of going, okay, this is all together. We're together. We are, one of my favorite communion lines says that we're one with all who share this feast in every time and place. So, going to leave the Czech Republic and we're going to Turkey. What are we doing in Turkey? Well, we are meeting a Ukrainian Orthodox priest. Why, you ask, is a Ukrainian Orthodox priest in Turkey? I'm glad you asked. The Ukrainian Orthodox priest is in Turkey. You see, he grew up in Ukraine. His name is Father John Koval. He grew up in Ukraine, and he decided that he was going to go and pursue an education in Moscow. And he got this education in Moscow. He got a musical education, and then he went to seminary and became a priest at one of the major Orthodox churches in Moscow. Something happened in the last few years you may have heard about. There's a little disagreement about who owns what part of Ukraine between Russia and Ukraine. And that's putting it mildly. So due to this disagreement, things started going bad for Holy Mother Russia. And so whoever was in charge of the Russian Orthodox Church put out a little prayer that was to be read verbatim by every priest in every church. And the prayer prayed for victory for Holy Mother Russia. You may remember that our friend Father Koval is Ukrainian, and he read it verbatim with just one teensy little change. He changed the word victory to peace. And there was an agent of the Kremlin who was there, who was really not happy about it. I think an agent of the Kremlin. Is that the right thing? Am I saying the right thing? Whatever it is. An agent of the government was there, was very not happy about it. Most of the church really loved Father Koval, but they found 5 or 6 people to say that he was spreading dissent and all of that stuff and causing trouble, and they had him suspended. And then after having him suspended, while he was suspended, he came back for Easter Sunday with his family and was treated as a dissident or whatnot, and said that he was spreading, who knows, heresy or something. They defrocked him, and he appealed to, I believe, the priest, the head of the church in Constantinople, and they moved him to Turkey, where we found him there. I'm sorry, I don't have my normal energy level this morning. Turkey. From Turkey, I wanted to stop at Holy Family Catholic Church in Gaza, which is the only Catholic church in Gaza. I saw a picture. I'd been planning to talk about them for a while, but I saw a picture last night from a day before of them holding Mass at night to the light of a cell phone flashlight. It is rough being a Christian in Palestine these days, and I really admired, I don't remember the name of the church. I think it was a Lutheran church in Bethlehem, actually, a Lutheran church in Bethlehem. I wish I could remember the name. And they had, the minister said that if Jesus was born today, he would be born in Gaza. And they had a powerful, striking image of the Christ child in the rubble. It was called Jesus in the Rubble. These are also the people that we're celebrating communion with today. And I meant to do more research, but I spent most of the week in bed. So we won't have time to take a trip to India, where, fun fact, the European missionaries arrived in India prepared to spread the gospel. And they realized they were roughly 1,500 years too late. Thank you, St. Thomas. St. Thomas, famously Thomas the Doubter, got to India first and spread the gospel long before the Europeans got there. We won't have time to talk about the church in Korea, which was started by the Presbyterian church in Korea, which was started by two Presbyterians named Horace and Horace. But the way that they spread the gospel was that they empowered, and this may come as a shock, Koreans to spread the gospel and start churches. And that led to the church growing by leaps and bounds. And if you look in your purple hymnal, you'll see a lot of random hymns with Korean stuff in them, and that's because there's a lot of Korean churches that are part of the Presbyterian Church USA. I wanted to spend a little bit more time with some churches in Kenya and, what's the other one? Uganda, where there are gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer Christians in Uganda who are meeting in underground churches where, because just being openly gay is a crime in those countries. But they are, and they're Christians. And they too are sharing communion with us. Meant to make a stop in Peru with some Peruvian Christians who'd learned about liberation theology from the father of liberation theology, Gustavo Gutierrez. But we didn't get the opportunity. I didn't get the opportunity. That article's open on my laptop, and I really meant to read it when I was at work this week. But that didn't work out. I'm hoping to come back to this next week because it was so much fun taking this trip around the world, and I went, we need to spend more time with this next year. So hopefully World Communion Sunday next year will be more of a World Communion series. And hopefully I'll have a little more energy. We want to make one more stop, though, during the sermon part of this, back in the United States, outside of in a New Jersey suburb, outside of a warehouse that you wouldn't recognize as anything other than a warehouse, where there are women, children, and pastors and other protesters gathered because family members are inside because it is a immigration detention center. Melissa Flora Bixler, who wrote the book I mentioned a couple weeks ago, wrote about this communion service where They gathered, and police officers stood guard around the detention center. She said she wrote to protect them from our worship. They offered communion to the police officers, but none of them took any. They shared communion outside the walls. We are one with all who share this feast in every time and place, regardless of their particular version, regardless of their particular understanding of the Christian faith. I wanted to share some of those places because I think it's important that we know that we discern the body, because we are, this bread here, yes, is the body of Christ. And we too are the body of Christ with all who share around the world. And I wanted us to remember them as we take the bread. The bread, by the way, is from, well, it's not Italy, but it's Italian bread and German rye bread and rye bread from America, I guess. And French bread, yes. Thank you. And it's all different colors to remind us that the Church of God is all different colors.